All right, so moving on to the next segment. I'll be sharing my thoughts on who could become the next candidates and the possible next head coach for the 3 NFL openings that will be available at the end of the NFL regular season. So we are 2 weeks away from the NFL playoffs. So as of right now, we know Black Monday is going to happen where some head coaches are going to be fired and relieved from their duties once the NFL regular season concludes. So in that time frame, you do have 3 opening jobs that will be available. That being the Chicago Bears job, that being the New York Jets job, and that being the New Orleans Saints job. So those 3 head coaching positions will be available. So we'll go into the Chicago Bears. For the Chicago Bears, the candidates that could become the next head coach for the Chicago Bears, you have Ben Johnson, who is the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. You have Cliff Kingsbury, former head coach for the Arizona Cardinals, but now is the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. I do believe those 2 offensive-minded guys are the candidates to become the next head coach for the Chicago Bears. But in my opinion, I think Ben Johnson would be the perfect candidate to become the next Chicago Bears head coach. Now, Ben Johnson will be a great head coach for the Chicago Bears if they want to go in that direction, hire him as their next head coach. I know Ben Johnson has expressed that he is somewhat interested in this job, and I think this would be the perfect job for him out of all the possible job openings for him if he decides to leave the Lions. He's a perfect candidate. He's young. He's 38 years of age. He's very intelligent, play calling wise, one of the best play callers in the league today. The Bears need an offensive-minded head coach to help Caleb Williams develop and help him groom. A defensive-minded coach with the Chicago Bears really doesn't do any justice for the mistakes and the things that Caleb Williams still needs to clean up in his young NFL career to get him back to playing at that USC level or even close to that. But I think Ben Johnson would be a really creative Chicago Bears coach, calling plays on the offensive side, and with players like Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Odunze, who they drafted in the first round as well. If they retool this offensive line and they continue to improve on the defensive side of the ball, I think the Chicago Bears could go and play at an offensive level that we thought they would in the beginning of the NFL season. So I think this would be a really intriguing job for Ben Johnson to accept with the Chicago Bears. I know Cliff Kingsbury does have some history with Caleb Williams, but I just don't think at this particular time, I don't think Cliff Kingsbury would fit the bill for what the Bears need. The Bears need a leader that will be there for a long time instead of going from coach to coach or quarterback to quarterback. Ben Johnson could be the guy that helped bring the best out of Caleb Williams. I think he'd be the best candidate with the Chicago Bears. Now, the Jets. The New York Jets is going to be a hard job to take. Not only is it a lot of pressure playing in a big market city like New York, there's a lot of expectations when you coach out in a big city or you play out in a big city. And the Jets have missed the playoffs for 14 years in the NFL. That's the longest drought in the NFL today amongst all 32 NFL teams. So candidates for this job, I think Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and Mike Vrabel, a former head coach with the Tennessee Titans, could fit the bill. And Brian Flores, defensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings, former head coach with the Miami Dolphins a few years ago. I think those 3 players fit the bill of what the New York Jets could be looking for. But it's hard. This one's hard. I think the 2 perfect candidates for the New York Jets to be their next head coach would be Aaron Glenn and Mike Vrabel. I think those 2 defensive-minded coaches would fit the bill and would do great jobs with the New York Jets being their head coach. Whatever direction they go in, I think they need a defensive-minded guy to change the culture around in New York. Now, with Robert Saleh, you saw the job that he did with the New York Jets, turning around that defense. They were a top 10, top 5 unit while he was the head coach there. The defense was really well. That's one of the reasons why they thought they were a quarterback away until Aaron Rodgers thought he could take over the entire franchise, and the franchise finds itself at 4-11. But as I digress, I think a coach like Aaron Glenn or Mike Vrabel can check a lot of attitudes at the door. They could change the culture around for the better for the New York Jets, a team that has missed the playoffs for 14 years in a row. That is the longest drought once again in the NFL amongst the 32 teams in the league today. They need somebody that's going to check their attitudes, get the defense playing well once again. And you could worry about what's going to happen with the quarterback position later on. Aaron Rodgers has 1 foot in, 1 foot out for his future with the New York Jets anyway. So if he departs or if whoever comes in, they could draft a quarterback to learn from Aaron Rodgers. So I think this is a good situation. But Aaron Glenn could be a good choice. due to the fact that he's turned around this Detroit Lions defense for the better. I mean, this Detroit Lions team, I used to kid around and say they have a FCS secondary for college football. But he's done a really good job with this defense despite all the injuries and all the players that they have on IR this year. Plus, Mike Vrabel, being a leader that he is, the job that he did with the Tennessee Titans, he would do a phenomenal job turning around the culture with this New York Jets team. They need a leader. They absolutely need a leader. The Titans, he did a good job with them, got them to the #1 seed in the AFC once upon a time ago, and did help the 2020 Tennessee Titans team go on the road and defeat Tom Brady in the New England Patriots. That was Tom Brady's final game with the New England Patriots. And he went on the road to Baltimore and defeated Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens, the first time around when Lamar Jackson won his MVP back in 2019. So he knows what it takes to be a good head coach, to get his team into championship contention. That is everything that this New York Jets team desperately needs. But I think Aaron Glenn or Mike Vrabel could be the perfect dance partners to turn around the culture out there in New York. Now, last but not least, the New Orleans Saints. This one's another tough job to take, but it's got to be taken. Candidates for this job would be Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn, Darren Rizzi, who is the interim head coach right now with the New Orleans Saints. So I could see Darren Rizzi, the interim head coach, becoming the full-time head coach with the New Orleans Saints. He was their special teams coordinator and was elevated to becoming the interim head coach when the team decided to fire Dennis Allen. Now, this team has been through a lot. The New Orleans Saints started off 2-0 at the beginning of the season, and I claimed them to be a top 5 team, but man, was I wrong about that as the weeks went on, and everything just blew up. The team ended up firing Dennis Allen, and they traded away their veteran cornerback in Marshawn Lattimore. Now, this job for the New Orleans Saints is not the most attractive job opening to take, but due to the fact that this team could be in a bad situation cap space wise, they have a lot of veteran players that don't really know what they're going to do with their contracts, like Derek Carr, for example. And the only young player to look forward to building this team around would be Chris Olave. Now, Alvin Kamara is going to be there for the sake of the future, but in terms of young stars that are not past the age of 25, 26, the only bright player on this New Orleans Saints team would be Chris Olave. But Darren Rizzi, under the circumstances, has done a great job as the interim coach with the New Orleans Saints. They played a little better. I mean, he's been 3-3 at the helm. You can see his passion, his desire to want to win. You can see that last night in the game against the Green Bay Packers, even though they got shut out. You can see it in all the other games. The Saints have been playing better under the command of Darren Rizzi. And one of those losses that they experienced was against the Commanders, a Commanders team that is a playoff team, 10-5. They only lost that game a few weeks ago at home by a score of 20-19. And that's because they gambled to go for 2. If that game went into overtime, we don't know how that would have went. But even the Demario Davis, the linebacker for the New Orleans Saints, one of the most underrated linebackers in the league, a veteran player that is respected amongst his peers in that Saints locker room, has even vouched for Darren Rizzi to become the full-time head coach with the New Orleans Saints due to the fact that the job that he's done and the way he's executed and the opportunity that he's been gifted. Again, 3-3 from a team that was 2-0 and then completely collapsed. I think that he's got a true shot. If they don't go in that direction, Brian Flores could be a true candidate. I think that could be the direction they go in. I don't see them getting a guy like Ben Johnson. I just don't see him taking that job. They would have to get a strict, firm, once again, probably a defensive-minded guy. But Darren Rizzi as a special teams coordinator, it's not impossible to be a good special teams coach. Just ask John Harbaugh how that's went with his time with the Baltimore Ravens and being a former Super Bowl champion in this league. So that's the directions I think these 3 respective franchises should go in. And those are the following candidates I do believe could become the next Chicago Bears, New York Jets, and New Orleans Saints head coaches.